Hey everyone, welcome to my podcast, Inside Equine Minds, where I, Caitlin Hendry, meet with various horse professionals, trainers, riders, grooms, to dive deep inside the minds of the most successful horses in various disciplines. I'll take you behind the scenes from the horse's perspective to learn about how these horses are trained and managed in a way that strengthens their mental game and has fueled their massive success. This podcast is brought to you by EQPI, or Equine Performance Identities, a personality profiling tool for horses that guides people to becoming the partner their horse actually needs. We all want our horses to be a happy and willing partner and to enjoy spending time with us. An EQPI profile gives you the information about your horse's individual needs and motivations so you can adapt the way that you're working with them to ensure just that. And should we decide that we're just not the best person for our horse or circumstances lead us to having to sell or lease, EQPI is a great tool for sharing what your horse's temperament is to ensure they do get a good match with their next person. Or maybe you love your horse so much that you want more of them and you decide that you want to breed. An EQPI profile provides invaluable information about temperament, so you can really make sure you're looking at the full picture when you're choosing the best stallion or mare for your horse. Only a few episodes left of Season 2 of Inside Equine Minds. I know it's hard to believe, but we are starting to wind things down, and I'm excited to have Cheryl Patton and her daughter Elizabeth Ivanovich of Clovermeade Welsh Ponies on for this episode. Cheryl herself has quite a successful record. She is not a one-time, not even a three-time, but an 8-time USEF Pony Hunter Breeder of the Year, which is quite outstanding to think about. And a lot of this success is thanks to her stallion, Clovercroft's Hero of the Heart, known as Hero, who is our featured horse today, which is a little bit interesting because he's actually never been ridden or trained in any way, really, aside from breeding. He's also literally never left their property in Tennessee. So it's a little bit of a different episode today, but still very interesting nonetheless. Hero is a 1999 Welsh and Arab stallion. He himself has been a 3-time number 1 USEF Pony Hunter Sire, including the past 2 years. Some of his recent notable offspring include Clovermeade Heartthrob, who in 2024 with owner Riley Robertson was the National Reserve Champion in the small division and 4th of the Pony Hunters overall nationally. Clovermeade Heartthrob has also kicked off 2025 with a bang with Leslie Grace Stenbeck-Werner. At the Winter Equestrian Festival, they finished 4th overall in the small division. Another notable offspring is Clovermeade Pop Secret, who was 4th overall for the Pony Hunters in the nation in 2023. So, Hero of the Heart, Hero, he has been a stallion for many years. So obviously that is just scraping the surface, but a little bit of insight into how successful he has been as a Pony Hunter sire. So I, for one, am very excited to talk with Cheryl and Elizabeth to really understand how they've cultivated this success with Hero as a Pony Hunter stallion. How do they figure out who is a stallion? How do they figure out which mares to breed with, etc.? And what is it about Hero's personality that makes him such a successful Pony Hunter stallion? And of course, before we speak with Cheryl and Elizabeth, we are going to do a quick overview of Hero's EQPI personality profile just to make sure that we're all on the same page. As a quick reminder for my regular listeners, or if you're a new listener to the show, the way that we develop a personality profile is through an input survey that I developed. This survey is available online on the EQPI website, which is www.equineperformanceidentities.com. It is a quick online survey where a user or a guest submits their inputs as far as what behaviors they observe and how often, and then using their inputs, I am able to then sort of map where the horse and their personality falls on 4 spectrums of behavior that ECPI measures. These 4 spectrums are independence, which is the horse's preference to control or comply; extroversion, which is the horse's preference to interact or isolate; stability, which is the horse's preference for predictability or variety; and lastly, the structure spectrum, which is the horse's preference for clarity or flexibility. So using those inputs, I'm able to determine where exactly on that spectrum the horse falls. And then in addition to each individual spectrum, I then look at how the spectrums relate to each other on the horse's profile. And this is really what gives the individuality and the nuance to each horse's individual personality. For the independence spectrum, Hero is considered slightly low on this spectrum. Low independence horses usually are more cooperative, willing, eager to please. They may not have as much self-confidence as a high independence horse would, so they usually will rely on others for clear guidance if they are unsure at all. For the extroversion spectrum, Hero is situational, which just means that this spectrum is not particularly strong for him one way or another. And so the way that we really figure out how situational spectrums actually impact the horse is by looking at how that spectrum relates to other spectrums on the horse's profile, which I will get to in a minute. For the stability spectrum, this is Hero's strongest spectrum of behavior, meaning that it will influence his behavior the most of all of the spectrums in the profile. Hero is high stability, and high stability horses, as sort of the name implies, are very stable, steady, methodical horses. From an energy perspective, they are usually very predictable. They don't really build up over time if they haven't been given a job. They're more laid back, they're calm, they don't react to other people's energy as much as a horse who would low stability would. And then for the last spectrum, Hero is also situational for the structure spectrum. So let's dive into those relationships between the spectrum so we can really understand how these situational spectrums show up. The strongest relationship in Hero's profile, meaning that these spectrums are the farthest apart if you looked at the profile graphic, is the relationship between his high stability and his low independence. These horses tend to be more reactive versus proactive in their thinking, so they are not necessarily going to be anticipating. They're going to be waiting to be told what to do. Their energy is just a lot more steady. They are not trying to make their own decisions per se. They also may take a little bit more time to process what you're asking, like give them an extra second or so to sort of go from the thinking to the action state when you ask them to do something. The second strongest relationship for Hero is between his high stability and his situational extroversion. So this relationship, when it comes to social interactions, they tend to want to stick with people or horses that they already know. If they had a choice, they take a little bit more time to build connection with other people or horses. Not necessarily that they are introverted, but just prefer to stick with who they know. Another notable relationship is between Hero's high stability and a situational structure. And this relationship means that a horse is more casual with rules, meaning that they don't necessarily need a really strict program in order to be happy. They're more adaptable. They also might be a little bit more pushing the boundaries a little bit. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case with Hero because he's also low independence. And so he's not necessarily going to want to be pushing the boundaries as a high independence horse might. But from a rules perspective, it's not super important to him, and it's not going to impact him in a huge way if his day-to-day routine is not exactly the same every single day. A few other relationships for Hero's profile, none of which are super strong, is between his situational structure and his low independence. His independence is a little bit lower than his situational structure, so he may have a little bit of risk aversion there, wanting to mitigate risk. But again, his high stability and his situational structure relationship with that casual with rules just makes him really, really adaptable and easygoing. So I don't really see that being an issue. And then the situational extroversion and the low independence, that relationship makes them more other oriented because the independence is lower than the extroversion. Again, not a super strong relationship though. And then his situational extroversion and his situational structure, although they are both situational, his extroversion is slightly lower than his structure. And so again, with the social relationships, it may just take him a little bit more time to build trust because of that structure being higher than the extroversion. But again, his strongest relationships are really between the high stability and his low independence, his high stability and his situational extroversion, and his high stability and his situational structure. So I think those are really the relationships and the behaviors that we're going to be seeing the most from Hero. If you want to see Hero's profile in more detail, it is available on the Inside Equine Minds Patreon account, as well as any of the other horses that have been featured on this podcast. So if you want to see the graph so you can kind of see what I'm talking about, the pictorial representation of the profile, then you can check out the profile on the Patreon account for Inside Equine Minds. All right, enough of the super technical stuff. Let's get to the fun part and talk to Cheryl and Elizabeth about Hero's personality. So he is by Chloe Olympian. Chloe. Thank you for correcting me. He's by Chloe Olympian, who was your first stallion. Is that correct?
Well, we went through several. It just never worked out. So Olympian was about 9 years old when we went out to Oklahoma and got him. So he was a proven stallion. We had seen him shown. Loved his disposition. He was beautiful. His breeding is fabulous. He's a Finland Blue Danube son, if anybody remembers him. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if you look at his papers, Olympian goes back many generations with recognizable names. Both of Hero's parents were very easy to get along with, easy to take care of. Olympian, when he was showing, they did drive him. And they said you could ride him, but we never did, and we never did show him. And we have not shown Hero.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Elizabeth said he's never left the property.
No, he hasn't.
Which is like pretty remarkable to think about.
And we don't want him to leave. But no, he doesn't have to go anywhere. He stays home. He has a fabulous life.
Mm-hmm. And then you have his son as well. So, I mean, you have multiple generations of this bloodline. Oh, I'm curious, what made you get into breeding?
Well, I got my first horse at 40 years old. And I had always wanted one, but my parents couldn't afford it. So
very common narrative. I think a lot of people will relate.
And my husband's family has a farm. I just decided one day to go out and buy a horse, and I did. And so we started buying more ponies for the girls. And so I started giving them lessons at a school here. And the instructor wanted to go down to Gayfield's Welsh Ponies and wanted me to go with her. So I did, and we came home with 2 or 3 ponies. And that started it all. I enjoy doing this, and I get letters from children, emails now, about an old pony that they've gotten that I had bred and how much they love it. And I love that.
Yeah. Well, and you're very good at it because you're an 8-time USCF Pony Hunter Breeder of the Year. So it's like, you know, your first horse at 40 and now you're like nationally known for pony breeding. So
yes, it's been a lot of fun. 2 of my daughters have come back to Nashville in the last 2 or 3 years. they're going to be able to take this over. I wasn't what's going to happen when I'm too old to do this. And so they've really gotten into it, and my granddaughter just loves it.
So you mentioned temperament a number of times and passing on the good temperament. We're definitely going to get to the nature versus nurture question, because having been in breeding for so long, I'm very curious to know your thoughts. But you keep mentioning this great temperament. And so I'm curious, what part of Hero's personality stands out to you the most in a good way? Like, what's your favorite part?
Yeah, probably just the ease of handling. He, in the past, I would just go to the gate and call him, when people would come to look, and I would call him, and he would run up, and he just looked beautiful. He's really pretty. And he would just look beautiful running up. Part of that is just ponies are more like puppies. He loves the attention. He is getting older now. He's not, he doesn't act like he's 2 years old. He acts like an older horse. He looks much younger than he is.
You mentioned his ease of handling, and he doesn't have a super social profile. I hesitate a little bit because he is low independence, and low independence horses are usually more sort of, I guess, team oriented, if that's what you want to call it. With people, they are more team oriented. I'm not sure if that fully translates to horses, but they do tend to be more cooperative and more pleasing, and they're more intrinsically driven to please, which can sometimes come across as more social. But if we look at the extroversion spectrum on his profile, he's only situational. He actually has a slight tendency to be a little bit lower, but he's still technically situational, so it's not really strong either way. I'm curious, when he runs up to the fence and when you call him, does he do that for anybody? Is he sort of like eager to meet these new people, or is he like, oh, that's Cheryl, I know Cheryl, I'm going to go say hi?
Elizabeth, what do you think?
I think he knows who he's going up to, because when we have new people come out working here, they oftentimes have a little bit of a challenge at first while he gets to know them, in terms of having him trust them to, put a halter on him and take him somewhere else. Does this apply also to other horses, though?
Well, I'd be curious what you say, because I've been doing this for a couple of years, and I am always open to still learning. I typically do interpret that towards people and horses, but also, there's the acknowledgement that we are a completely different species, and so it's very likely that they're going to treat us differently than they do horses. So, why are you asking? I assume that he responds differently to horses, or?
I think he's kind of the same with horses. He definitely, he's lived near other horses his whole life, so he's not in the same field as them most of the time, unless we've turned a mare out with him. But when for a long time, he lived just on the other side of the fence from maybe 15 mares. And he had this place where they would go stand on one side and he would stand on the other, and they would just hang out. And now he's got a bit of a gap between him and other horses, but he will still go and commune with the horse that's on the other side. However, if you put a new horse in, particularly if it's a mare in season on the other side, he will act like he's 3 again. He'll really get worked up about it, and as if it's time for breeding.
I was going to say, in a stallion way, or in a
stallion way. But if it were a mare that was coming into season that had lived across from him, for months, he would be a totally different horse about it.
When he stands across from the fence from the herd of ponies or the herd of mares, and you say they sort of just kind of hang out together, are they mutually grooming over the fence line, or they're just kind of standing there in each other's space?
Well, his fence is electric.
Oh, okay.
So they are not grooming across the fence. They'll just stand there and just be in the same area in the shade.
Yeah. So that's where I feel like the low independence can sometimes lead to us maybe thinking that they're more extroverted than they are because they want to be with the group. They sort of want to be included. But you might not see, and again, it's challenging because he's lived, next to horses, but never really with horses. So it's hard to kind of gauge. But like a low independence horse who is situational extroversion or low extroversion might want to be with everybody, but not really interact. Like they don't want to be left behind, but they also don't want to be fussed with per se.
I mean, that sounds about right for him to me.
Is he like that with people?
Yes, probably. I mean, I think he doesn't mind being, groomed or having interaction, but I do think he loses a little bit of patience if it goes on too long.
I did see a post on Facebook recently about his friends, and there's a goose or turkey.
It's a turkey.
Or something.
It's a wild turkey.
Oh, it's wild? It's not even like your turkey? Or
we probably have 500 to 1,000 wild turkeys that live on our property.
Oh, wow.
And they love going to his pasture to eat up the crumbs of what he's left on the ground.
Yeah. Do they go to any other pastures also, or mainly his?
They rotate throughout the year, but he is really a prized friend of the wild turkeys. Yeah.
And what does he think of that?
He's really laid back about it. I mean, they grew up around these turkeys, all of them. So none of them seem to flinch at all when they're around.
Gotcha. What are your thoughts, Cheryl, on Hero's social tendencies?
Well, things were done differently in the past. Now he's so valuable that he mainly does that. He learned how to do AI last year. He's really smart. He's learned several things just in the past few years, and it doesn't take him long when he'll figure out, hey, this isn't bad. I'll just do what they want. But years ago, I put mares and foals in with stallions, and the stallions would babysit the babies. Then it was just kind of like I was so afraid something would happen to a baby, unforeseen. Being in there, stallions never did anything to cause me to think that, but I quit leaving the babies in with the stallions.
Mm-hmm. How did Hero? Was he a good babysitter?
Oh yeah. I learned this from other breeders. I didn't try it on my own. They actually like the babies, and the babies will stay out of the way during the breeding. They'll just they'll stand back. I wouldn't do that with every stallion because some are just easier, just like Hero, than others. There's one of the stallions that we've had I would not leave a baby with, but the rest of them I would trust to leave a baby in there. Anyway, the mares go in with the stallions and used to just go in with the stallions and would either leave them in there for a month or two or put them in every other day, and they would spend the day with the stallion. And we still do some of that. He's got this little mare that is just every baby they have is special. And Hudson, the stallion that Elizabeth talked about, is one of those babies. But for the past 2 years, that match has had 4 babies each year at pony finals.
Yeah.
And that's what you really want, is to find the right match. And there's another mare that we've got that I think we've got a similar match. But we'll see. We've just started showing her babies. The thing about a stallion is you really don't start breeding it till it's around 3. And then it's 8 years. I mean, you see the babies and they're cute. And but it's 7 or 8 years before you know what you've really got in a stallion. Well, that puts them at 10 years old. And if you're looking, for performance, if you're showing in hand, you know what you've got, to take to. Well, we did a lot of Welsh shows when the girls were younger.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's a long game.
You've got to have patience to do this.
Yeah.
We started in about the year 2000, sending a lot of our stock to Rabbit Hill Farm in Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And Abby has the same feeling that I do. So that each pony is an individual athlete.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get the wonderful athlete and sometimes you don't, or maybe they don't like it or whatever. So not every one of them that gets trained, goes to pony finals. A lot of them do. We have a whole lot that do. If you look in the breeder, and with the USEF,
Mm-hmm.
and you look at our numbers that are like with Hero,
Mm-hmm.
he's only got 7 right now because I have other stallions.
Right.
He's only got 7 performing right now. On the A circuit, there's others out there, but on the A circuit, and the next breeder has about twice that much, and I still have more points. I guess that's sounding right.
Brag away, Cheryl. Brag away.
But I don't know that people look at that so closely.
Yeah.
I do keep up with that. And then there'll be some that'll just have 3 or 4 and they'll be, getting close.
I would just say, like, one thing that's really been kind of unique about him is that even when we have stuff that doesn't make it to the hunter circuit that he's produced, it's always been ponies that we still are, can find something great for them to do. Like, they're all really wonderful. And actually, there's been very few that haven't made it into pony finals that he has sired. And he's actually, I think it's maybe 2 or 3 foals that he has per year, because we've never really bred him to outside mares until this year, because he did just learn how to do AI and he's never been off the farm. So he's really been bred relatively little for how successful he's been. I just, it's like amazing if you could communicate to him how successful he's been. He would be like, what are you even talking about? Like,
he's just living the small town life. And
there's
farm.
more to this world than this farm.
So we talk about how great his temperament is, and even, the ponies, if they don't make it to the A circuit, they're still really easy to find a home. Is there any, catch at all? Any tricky things about him or any challenges about his temperament?
I can't think of any. Can you, Elizabeth?
I will just say that he does have this thing about him where if there's more than one person near him, he thinks something is up. And so if 2 people go out to the field to catch him, he will decide that he's going to play a game where you won't be able to catch him. And then I know people say, oh, don't ever let them get away with that. But if you leave for 30 minutes and just one person goes back, he'll walk right up to you and let you catch him.
That's so weird. But why do you think that is? Was there something in the past?
I think that that's just more of what happens. Like if there's a veterinary visit or a farrier coming, it's like more than one person will come out to him. He's just learned that there are signs that he has to pay attention to.
That's funny. Very smart.
And that happens maybe twice a year. But when he does it, it's just it's hilarious because you can tell that he is almost enjoying this game of keep away that he's playing with you. But I think generally he's so easy to work with that it's just kind of shocking to us when he has a moment.
He does have a very calm personality. His stability is his strongest spectrum on the high side. So they're just kind of very easygoing, predictable behavior, predictable energy wise. They're not really the horses that kind of blow up or build energy if they can't go out, if they're not turned out, that sort of thing. But he does have a little bit of risk aversion because his independence is lower than his structure. It's not a very strong relationship, meaning that those two spectrums are not super far apart on the profile, but there's a little bit of that there. So I was curious if he's running away. You sort of mentioned that it sort of looks like a game versus being anxious about anything?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, generally he's not running. You can tell when you get close and a horse doesn't want to be caught in that kind of like scared way. He's not like that at all. He's, like very in those moments, he's very confident. He'll actually walk right up to you and then it's like zoink. He just runs away.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
That's funny. What do you do around the barn and sort of managing him? Anything in his routine that you do to accommodate his personality?
I almost feel like he accommodates us. Like we have become really consistent with him. So he gets fed at almost exactly the same time every day. When we're keeping him in overnight, we bring him in at the same time. We blanket him at the same time.
Does he seem to prefer that, or
he'll be waiting for you at the gate?
Is he upset if it's ever not according to the routine?
If you keep him in the morning longer than what he thinks he should, be kept in, that's the only time that I ever see him get a little upset. And I think that that's probably the case with most horses. They're ready to go out.
And you said that he probably accommodates you more than you accommodating him. Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, we have over 50 horses on the property, so he fits into our schedule. He's a big part of our schedule, but at the same time, we kind of have to work in a very systematic way to get everything done that needs to be done. And so, I think it's worked out, and especially seeing the personality profile for him being so consistent and stable, that we have been that way with him. I do think that he has preferred that probably, but we are not necessarily doing it because that's what he likes. We're doing that because that's what we need to do to get the job done.
Right. And he's just like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anything coming to mind for you, Cheryl? Anything that you all do to accommodate his personality related to either turnout or blanketing or feeding or toys, enrichment? I don't know. Anything coming to mind?
Well, not recently, because Elizabeth has been out there doing most of this the last couple of years since they've moved here. And all I think of him is just an easy, very easy stallion to deal with, even when there is a mare there. And many times, it can be a little dangerous doing this if you do the hand breeding, where one person holds the mare and then someone brings the stallion up. I'm actually more afraid of the mare when I was doing that. I would be more afraid of the mare than the stallion, because he knew what he was going to do and I knew what he was going to do, and he never ever made a move to that I felt like I was in danger. Mm-hmm. But the mares can do that, and so you have to watch out for them.
Yeah.
And now they're doing the AI and on the farm, and we're also sending it off. Elizabeth knows more about that than I do. I didn't get involved with that, so she can tell you more about that and his behavior with that.
Okay.
I'll just talk a little bit about when we trained him to the mount, because you hear all of this about, old stallions don't like it. Like if they've bred to an actual mare, they'll just never want to do it. And he took about 10 seconds to train. And was just so easy, like probably easier than our younger stallions, because he knew what needed to happen more or less. So I think, there's obviously a lot of danger in that as well, because you have to get underneath the stallion, kind of to the side of the mount. But, he's one that I'm not concerned about at all, even though he is bigger than most of our other stallions. He's just so easy to handle.
Yeah. Is there any sort of routine to get him ready? Like I knew somebody who worked at a facility, and there was a stallion that I guess his handler for a very long time used to smoke, and the stallion would not perform unless so whoever the new handler was didn't smoke, but had to just have a pack of cigarettes and light a cigarette in order to get the stallion to collect. anything like that with him?
So we're really safety oriented, and I think he rarely sees us with a helmet on unless we are going to breed. So we started that with when we were doing live cover with him. So I think he picked up on that as a signal that it was time to do his job. And so then I think that probably helped us carry over when we did start collecting him.
Got it.
It's a little easier to imitate than smoking a cigarette.
Yeah. So you mentioned that most of his babies make it to the A circuit, and even if he doesn't have that many foals currently competing, they're all doing very well. And so I would love to know your thoughts on what you think it is about Hero's personality that makes him such a successful pony hunter sire.
Well, I mean, it's the personality, it's the looks. He has a lot of physical, athletic ability. If you want to talk about nature and nurture, the babies, most of them, if they're handled, well, when they're born, most of those babies have not the same personality. They're just as individual as we are. But they start out with a good base of having that calm personality, and of course it gets more calm as they get older.
Right. Yeah.
Years ago, I did an article, and Elizabeth brings it up every once in a while. If I when I'm talking about who I'm going to breed, you get what you breed. And you can, looks-wise, personality-wise, temperament, everything, you get what you breed. So you want to breed the best that you can get. And that's part of the success right there, is that he's just a fabulous stallion. And we have tried to breed him to some really good mares. And when you find that magic, you don't change it. I've got other stallions I could breed her to, but I'm not going to change it because it's so good. And they've each got their own individual little personality, but they've all got that athletic ability and a wonderful temperament. If you find a stallion for your mare that you like what you see that you're producing, don't go switching around.
Don't try to fix what's not broke.
That's right. Elizabeth, do you feel like that too?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of our challenge now is that so much of our herd is related to him that we can't breed everything to him. So, I mean, we're really excited about being able to breed to some outside mares and see what he produces with other people's ponies. But I think, for me, a lot of what has made him successful in terms of his personality and in the discipline is that because they're ponies and because they're mainly ridden by children, you have to have that kind of laid back personality, that stability, that consistency in order to be able to deal with children who are inherently pretty inconsistent and do well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you feel like he passes that along to his foals?
Yes, he definitely does.
So if you had to put a percentage to it related to personality, what percentage would you say is the nature and what percentage would you say is the nurture?
Ooh, I would say it's almost 50-50 to me. They still have to get that good training, the good couple of first years. It could be 40-60, nature 40 and 60. I don't know. To me, it's 50-50. What do you think, Elizabeth?
I mean, I agree more or less. I do think that, even with his foals, we've seen a big difference. Since my sister and I moved back, the foals are being handled a lot more. There's lots of kids around. And so we are able to see kind of how they're coming along a lot more quickly. And just getting to that stability point that Hero has a lot quicker than the foals that were handled but not not to the kind of excessive level that we do at this point in time.
Not the hassling and harassing by children and
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, and by me, like you'll see on our social media, there's a lot of me and my husband like out there just mildly bothering them all of the time. And I think that that's really good for them because like we try to be really inconsistent with them actually, just to get them used to what it's like being around a kid. Like we'll go out into the field and have like a little dance party with music. My husband will go out there and play soccer with them, and like some of them will learn how to kick the ball.
Yeah.
And so I just think that that kind of stuff, it means that they just get to the point that with that like kind of maturation point a lot quicker than they would otherwise, because it is a lot of work to get one from through that nurture process. It is so much work to get one that's really ready for the A circuit.
Mm-hmm. And when you're out there doing dance parties or playing soccer with them, do you notice a difference between like Hero's foals versus a different stallion's foals and how they respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's differences between his own foals too.
Right.
But I would say like most of our stuff is related to him at this point. So like, you know, we had 4 foals last year, 2 were his, and he was the grandsire. So you see a lot of his personality coming through even in that next generation.
Yeah. His grandsire, that foal is out of Hudson?
Yes.
How similar is Hudson to Hero?
I think they're actually pretty similar in a lot of ways. The nice thing for Hudson is we have started keeping stallions together. And so like he was able to grow up with one of our other stallions. Like we wouldn't put them together if they're older. And so we are seeing some of that more social element for him of what it's like if he lives with another horse. And he's, I think, really enjoyed it, and it's been great for him.
Yeah. I mean, they are social animals. That's nice when they can have a herd.
And that's the way they were in the wild.
Exactly.
Or are in the wild. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think those are all my questions. Are there any like interesting stories that you want to share about him, or anything else that you want to add?
I mean, something that happens with like a really consistent pony is that like they don't necessarily do the most like hilarious or weird things.
Yeah.
Well, and we are having our stallions trained to ride now. We just feel like they need that, you know, as a backup.
And just in a job, to have a job.
Yeah. Yeah. But he was in that time that we just didn't do a lot of showing.
Yeah. He doesn't, again, looking at his profile, he doesn't really strike me as a horse who would be get amped up if he didn't have a job.
Yeah.
No, he's not.
I'm sure that there are some that just go crazy sitting in a field, but
we have one. It's not related to him at all. It's like an outside bred stallion. And he would have done really well to have another job. Well, I would actually like to ask you a question, which is, if you were to have a personality profile like this for a horse that is in kind of a performance discipline, what would you expect that horse to be like in those times that it's performing?
I would say, because there's a little bit of risk aversion and the low independence, I would say there may be a little sort of maybe some insecurity in new environments, or if being asked to do something that they don't know how to do, because there's some ambiguity there, which is a form of risk. But he does have such high stability, which is very, they're very calm and their energy is very steady. And so I don't think that this personality profile would be the type that in those situations, they just get wound up like a really tight ball of energy that's about to explode. I don't think that would be the case. I think if anything, if he was unsure about something, maybe he would just stop. Like he's, I had another stallion on who was a reiner, who had a very similar profile to him. And that's what the trainer Jesse said, was when he didn't understand something, Romeo would just kind of just stop and be like, I don't know what to do next. Just, he wouldn't get tense and speed up or anything. He would like kind of slow down and just be like, I'm just gonna chill here till we figure out what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that is kind of what my expectation would be. And like with him and with some of his offspring, what I see in those moments of I don't know what to do is like they'll give you a really serious side eye, like, and just stare at you like, what is it that you actually want here? And then once you show them a few times, then they have it. But it's just like those first few times are like just a little much, but then it's kind of more of a freezing rather than any kind of real misbehaving.
Behavior. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because the low independence, they do want to please and they are very accommodating. Like they're inherently willing. And so if they don't know the right answer, it's not that they don't want to do it. Like they, if you can break it down and show them what the right answer is, which I feel like, for any horse, if you're not sure, the default is to just break it down into the smallest steps possible and just make it very clear what you're asking. Some horses can take bigger steps and not get overwhelmed by not knowing the answer. And some horses really do need the hand holding a bit. But I wouldn't necessarily say he would need hand holding. I think there's just a little bit of insecurity. But again, that high stability is so high that I don't really see it turning into anything super dramatic. Can I ask why you asked?
I just think it's helpful to because we never trained him, and I think that's like one of our bigger regrets now. There's kind of this like, well, what if we had, like, what would he have been like? And I do think some of that carries over to his offspring, and so it's helpful to compare what we see of them in the arena to kind of what would be on paper for him, and that kind of gets a little to your nature nurture question as well.
Yeah, I mean, even though he does have the low independence, his stability is also higher than his structure spectrum. And when we see that relationship, those horses do tend to be more adaptable because they're not so driven by like rules and routine. And so if the routine's not the same every day, or if they have a few days off, they're not going to be a completely different horse when you start working with them again. That's why I was like, some risk aversion, like his independence is lower than his structure, which is situational, but it's not a super strong relationship. And the relationship between his stability and his structure is a stronger one. They're farther apart on his profile. And so I think that sort of adaptability and not needing a super consistent program or really clear rules, and then with that kind of willingness and wanting to please from the low independence, I do think it's a pretty amateur friendly or like kid friendly type of profile, because they're calmer and they're sweet and they want to please. They're not like very fast and energetic. Is that ringing true?
I would say so. What do you think, Mom?
Yes. We're breeding these for children. Ponies are driven a lot too. To drive one, you've got to have something that's pretty calm.
If this conversation has inspired you to learn more about your own horse's individual needs and motivations, you can get an EQBI profile at our website, which is www.equineperformanceidentities.com. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast and thought the content was interesting, I would love if you could share it with anyone else who you think would feel the same. I'd also really appreciate if you could take a quick minute to give this podcast a rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss any future episodes about the top horses in hunters, jumpers, equitation, dressage, eventing, reining, cutting, there's probably more that I'm forgetting, but make sure you click that follow button too. Well, thanks for listening to me, Caitlin Hendry, and I hope you tune in to the next episode of Inside Equine Minds.